Hello there. Right, welcome back to the kitchen. Right, I'm giving some feedback on the essay titles that I put up in the library optionally. There were these two. Essentially, of the people who did them, only only one did the top one. So what I'll do is I'll do two little videos. I'll do the first one on this second one, or the one that is numbered one, and then there'll be a separate one on the monopolistic competition thing. Okay. So, 1A, explain why demand curves slope downwards from left to right and supply curves slope upwards from left to right. So, technically there's no requirement to draw a diagram, but obviously everybody did. What was tending to happen here is that, is there were two types of answer, good ones and bad ones. The good ones tended to make use of economic theory, and the bad ones just described what was happening. So if you just said, here is a demand curve, it slopes downwards, blah, blah, blah. Here is a supply curve, it slopes upwards because suppliers want more money at higher prices or something. You're going to struggle to get past about 3 or 4. Yeah? What you needed to do is you needed theory. Yeah, we needed theory in each bit. Yeah. So essentially, where there we go. Essentially, where we're talking about demand. There are two possible theories that we might have in mind. Yeah? One is the principle of diminishing marginal utility. Yeah? So I think the key with this one is to make sure that you explain that it's marginal utility that's falling. And generally I thought the answers that I saw to this were pretty good. Yeah, but in other words, I eat a bun and that gives me a certain amount of happiness. You give me another bun. Yeah, 2 buns are better than 1. But the second bun isn't as good as the first one, and so on until I start chucking up. Yeah, so what we're saying is that if that's marginal utility, here's my first bun, that gives me quite a high amount of utility. Here's my second bun. Yeah, so I might pay £2 for my first bun. I might pay £1.20 for my second bun. Here's my third bun. Yeah, that I'm only prepared to pay kind of 60p for or something. Yeah. So what the best answers did is then say, well, okay, if the price is £2, obviously I'm only going to buy 1 bun, because I'm only prepared to pay £2. Yeah? The second one I'm only prepared to pay £1.20 for, so I wouldn't buy it if price was £2. If price falls to 60p, all of a sudden that bun and that bun and that bun now have marginal utility, at least greater than or equal to price. Alternatively, what people did is they did income and substitution effects. So what they were saying here, was that so a decrease in price, firstly, it means that there's an increase in your real income, a bit like the real balance effect at a macroeconomic level. So you can buy exactly what you bought before, but you'll have spare money over, which can be distributed between all the goods and services that you would buy. Or alternatively, or rather at the same time, simultaneously, there's that's the income effect. Secondly, there's a substitution effect, which says that suppose we've got 2 products, so we got I don't know, we got kind of tea and coffee or something, and what happens is that the price of that one goes down. The point is that this one now becomes better value for money. Than it was before. Therefore, people are likely to substitute, from one to the other. So that's demand. And so if you just drew a downward sloping demand curve and went, there you go, then you're going to be struggling. And the same with supply curves as well. Unless you're talking about the principle of diminishing returns to a factor, then you're fundamentally toast. You should have been taught this in year 12, but you've certainly been taught it in year 13. The idea that in the short run, we add increasing amounts of a variable factor to a fixed factor. So usually we add more and more labour, to fixed amounts, of land and capital. And as a result, what happens is that this gets overused. Because of that, what happens is that the marginal product, the extra amount of output per unit of labour, starts to fall, and as a result of that, marginal cost starts to go up. So to get a decent mark here, what you have to be doing is saying, well, there's quantity, there's cost, marginal cost slopes upwards. Some of you kind of did the increasing returns bit right at the start, but that's not important to this title. And what people then did is said, well, look, if the price is £5, you're only going to make those units where price is above marginal cost, or you'd make a loss. If price is £10, more units are now profitable. Yeah, so therefore it makes sense, yeah, to expand production. At price of £5 here, these units would be loss-making. The extra cost would be more than the extra revenue brought in. Yeah, at £10, yeah, these units are now profitable. Yeah, the extra money, extra revenue in the price is greater than marginal cost, and therefore supply is upward sloping. So to get 10 out of 10, you needed to make it quite technical along those lines. Part B was saying, Part B said, I'll just get the title again, but it was Part B was, come back, Part B was, a rise in price always leads to a fall in quantity demanded, but a rise in demand always leads to a rise in price and quantity. With the diagrams about it the same. Generally, this was done quite well. What was happening, is that people tended to assert, because they felt they had so much ground to cover, they tended to go, this is what happens, this is what happens, this is what happens, this is what happens. So what most people did is they took the first part and evaluated it, took the second part and evaluated it, and then came to a conclusion. So is it true that a rise in price always leads to a fall in quantity? Remember, supply and demand assumes that we have a free market, so firms aren't setting price. So you'd be well advised to, rather than just focus on demand, it might make sense to kind of put in a supply curve and say, well, look, here is our standard situation here, that if supply shifts from S1 to S2, we end up price rises from P1 to P2. What I wanted people to do was to tell me, well, why is that? So this idea at the original price, supply has actually fallen to A dash, and there, and supply has, which one's doing that? Is that one? Nope. Never mind. Supply, supply has fallen. Supply has fallen to A dash, so therefore we now have excess demand at the original price. That leads to an increase in price, which means that certainly in demand terms we end up, because demand is marginal utility, we end up buying a smaller number of units but at a higher price. So what was lacking generally was that level of analysis, that real explanation, as to why it was. People then went on to say, well, look, actually, it depends on price elasticity demand. Lots of people did this, and it would, but struggled to find a good example, I think, of perfectly inelastic demand. Not too surprisingly, because they're quite hard to find. But that was okay. Quite a lot of you thought about unusual demand curves, and there were some very good ones actually. Focusing on this idea of ostentatious goods, which said, well, often goods are normal up to a certain point, but things like kind of Rolex watches or whatever, the standard example, there is a zone, where an increase in price, say from here to here, actually leads to an increase in demand from Q1 to Q2. So that was done quite well. So generally I was quite happy with those. So it's then moving on to the second bit, which is, will an increase in demand always lead to an increase in price and quantity? Again, it's just explaining why this is happening. That's the key. And I think the heart of it is just being able to explain again that, the standard situation, D shifts from D to D1, is that there's initially excess demand, and that drives up price from P1 to P2, and quantity from Q1 to Q2. And it's the excess demand at the original price means there's no longer an equilibrium. Because there's excess demand, consumers compete for the products. That drives up price. As it does so, it stimulates producers to produce more, because as the price rises, they can cover the extra cost of production. I think once you get past there, you're reasonably safe. And people mainly adopted sort of three forms of evaluation. They kind of went, well, here's music downloads, fine. Here's kind of stadium seats, fine. And then some of you also speculated, well, it depends on what's happening to supply. So demand could rise from D1 to D2, but supply might rise because of a reduction in production costs or something from S1 to S2. Then we get an increase in both increase in quantity but not increase in price. And some of you went, actually demand could increase and supply could decrease simultaneously because of an increase in costs, and then we end up somewhere up here. So I think the key with that is when you look at it, you probably think, well, that's quite an easy title. Those should set you on edge slightly, and you can go, well, if it's so bloody easy, what are they going to be giving marks for? And therefore, it's important to make sure that you really analyse everything very, very carefully, and that you come to a big conclusion. Only one person, who wrote it really came to a big, final, evaluative conclusion. That really said, well, look, there's just, and they focused on this idea that, that ceteris paribus, the statement is probably true. There's other things being equal, fine, but other things aren't equal. And in the real world, many things are changing all at the same time. We can't hold all of the factors constant and so on and so forth. And it was that I thought, really, that's what pulled that answer, kind of clear of all the other ones, I think. So on this type of easier question, make sure, particularly, that if you say something, you really make sure that you justify it. Okay, I'll pause this and upload it, and then I'll go on to the other essay for the one person who did it, or anybody else who's interested in seeing how to answer it.